Hello, I'm going to take you through the steps of creating a push button that uses animated graphics and a maintained push button. Step number one is to come up to this bar and select a maintained push button. And I'm just going to draw one over here temporarily, and I want to change some of the properties of this push button. The first one is the border width. I'll change it to 1 so I get a thin line. The back style I want to make transparent. I want to change the shape to a circle. I want to turn audio off, and when I click apply you can see the changes I've made. The other important part though is to set up the connections, and that's going to allow me to select a tag that I want to use for this push button. So if I go over to the tags, I'm going to select HMI bit and then apply and OK. So I'm going to delete that because I've created another one over here of the right size. So delete that. And the next step in creating this push button is to change the properties of this push button. Now, where did I get that push button from? I would have gone over here under Symbol Factory, and then I would have pasted it into here. So I copy it here and paste it down here and then drag it to where I want to use it. So I'm going to delete this one so I don't have two. But then I would have clicked on it, right clicked, animation, visibility. That's what I want to change. So I want this button to have a tag, that HMI tag, and then click apply. But I want this button to be visible when things are true, and I want the other button to be invisible when it's true. So click on this, animation, visibility. I already have that tag there, but it's invisible. So when it's true, I want the out state to be visible, and when it's when it's false, I want this one to be visible. When it's true, I want this one to be visible. So I close these two, and then I just put the objects on top of the push button. Center it as best you can, and same thing with this one. And when I run the code, you'll see one or the other. And I have a display here. We'll just test this out. So when I press, I get a 1, so it looks like a push button, that's what's visible. And when I release it, it has an out push button. In step 2, I created a numeric display, which is right here. And I first have to stop this display. And I would have got that from right here. Okay, I drag it onto the page, create it, and I'm going to change some of the properties. Now, just to show you what I did with this one, is I would have resized it. You can change the border width, whether the font is bigger or smaller, how many decimal points it has. I would have used 0 and only 1 digit because it was going to be a 1 or a 0. And you can change colors and fonts and so on. So I'm going to delete that one. Now what I would have done over here, let's just look at some of the properties. I would have used an Arial font, size 16, no decimal places, 1 digit, and the connection would have been to the HMI bit. Okay, and you can see that if I go to tags, I would have connected it to this bit. And so now when I run this, and I click run, when I have the push button released, that's 0. When I press it in, it's equal to a 1. So step number 3 is the animated rounded rectangle. So I would have got that right here, selected it, dragged it onto the page, and now I'm going to change some of its properties. So click on it, right click, go to animation, and I'm changing the visibility of that switch, rounded rectangle. And what I'm doing, sorry, not visibility, but color, like I have here. And what I'm doing is changing it to red when this tag is equal to a 0, or to green when it's equal to a 1. But I'm going to make a change here. I want to actually make it, what did I want to make it? I wanted to change it so that it's its original color when it's equal to a 0. And I can make that original color whatever I want. So I'm going to close this. Yes, I do want the changes. But I'm going to make this color, and go to properties, equal to a grayish background right here. So backed to color animation. So when it's equal to a 0, it just has its normal gray background. When it's equal to a 1, it's green. Let's try it. So run it. And it's based on this push button. So gray when it's released, green when it's on. Alright. And that was step number 3, which is animating a rounded rectangle. Step number 4 is where I add a numeric display. And I do this by going over to numeric display, and I just drag it onto the page, but I already have this one that I'm going to edit. So I double click on it, and you can see I have 5 digits. You can change that. I think I really only need 3. And I've got 1 decimal point. This is the size I'm using. The back style is transparent, so that's why I'm only going to see blue, and the fore color I'm using is blue. The next step is to connect it to a tag, and I would have gone to tags. I would have selected, I think it's HMI volts. It's just a test tag. Okay, so I already have that there, and that's all you need to do for that tag. I'm going to use it in just a minute. But I think I should have actually made this, I should have made this more digits. So I'm going to right click on it again, close this box, right click on it, and I want to make it actually 4, because I want it to go up to 10 volts. Step number 5 is to make a horizontal slider. And this one's a little bit more complicated, but it's made up of a few parts. I'm going to separate them. So one of them is a horizontal box, which I would have got right here. The next is a scale, which I would have got right there. And the third is this bar, which is made up of the rectangle. Okay, I'm going to start with by moving this. Oops, I don't want to move the scale. I want to move this little rectangle. So make sure you select that. And I'm going to move it over to about here on the page. And then I highlight it. Make sure it's that one. I go to the properties for the animation. It's called a horizontal slider. And the tag that I want to use is HMI volts. I think you know where to find that now. And I'm indicating that when I'm at the 0 or current position, okay, it's going to give me 0 volts. And when I move this slider over to 200 pixels away to the right, it's going to give me 10 volts. Okay, so let's just try that out. And I don't even have to have the scale there, so I'm going to move it out of the way. And I run this. Okay, and when I move or drag this over to the left, I get 0. And when it moves over 200 pixels to the right, I get 10. But I'm going to move this back to 0, because what I want to do next is to make the image more appropriate for this example. I'm going to move a box just over this, And what I would have done in the properties of this box is to make the background invisible. Let's just look at that. And you can see, they like to use the word transparent. And then make sure it's transparent, okay. And then I would have dragged a scale on top of this. And the other thing that's important here is we want to have 10 divisions. So if I click on my scale, it's a scale where the lines are going upwards, and I have 11 major ticks. These are the bigger lines. The minor ticks are the ones inside. And I want to have 11 because I have 10 volts here. So that would be 0 to 10, which is 11 ticks. Once they say OK to that, run and test the graphic. As I move it to the right, the voltages increases on the numeric display, and it reaches that point that gives me 10 volts. Step 6 is a bar graph, and you'll find that here. Okay, I've already placed one onto the page, and I'm going to change some of the properties. So my back color, the gray background color, I changed here. My fill color kind of is a bluish color, and I've tied that graphic to the HMI volts tag. And the other thing I've done is I've got one threshold that when it reaches a value of 9, the fill color changes from the blue to red when that happens. And it's ranging from 0 to 10, which matches up with my volts tag, and it's going from bottom to top. And that's a simple one to create. So I'm going to run this. And so when my tag here is at 5, the tank seems to be half full. It's at 2.5, a quarter, 0, and 10. And remember we said that when it's greater than 9, it turns red. So that's an example of a bar graph for step number 6. Next object is called an animated fill, and I'm doing that by selecting a tank from my symbol factory. Slide way down here, tanks, and I think I used tank 38, which I believe is that one there. So I placed that onto the page. Again, I do that by selecting it, press copy. When you're on the page, press paste. But I'm going to delete that one because I already have this one down here. So the next step I would have done is to highlight it, right click on it, go to animation, select fill, and I've already put the tag called HMI volts there. But what I'm telling the system is that I want it to fill upwards, and when I go from 0 to 10 on my tag value, I want the tank to go from 0 to 100% full. Okay, so that's set, and it automatically will change that color. And I've just added a vertical slide. Remember, I got that from over here. And so let's test this. And so when I move my slider over, the color of that fill changes. Okay, very much like a bar graph, but this one's designed to be a little bit easier. This one, you have to get a graphic and fill the shape inside the graphic. Step number 8 is where I get a graphic from the symbol factory, and I would have got this under a folder called pumps, and this one happens to be called cool pumps. And then what I did here is I stopped this, I went to the animation, right clicked, color, and I added a little bit of extra here. So what this indicates, the little red lines here, is that the fill style is going to be whatever it was originally. So it happened to be a grade pump, and when the tag is equal to 1, it's going to be blue. So what I've indicated here is it says if, so I would have got that under expressions. So I go to expressions, and I would have clicked on if to start with. The second part would have found the tag, So I'm saying if this tag is greater than 5, so it's the volts tag, then I make this equal to a 1, else if it's not, I make it equal to a 0. So when I go back and click OK, what happens here is that when that tag's greater than 5, it's going to make the color blue because that's the value 1. When it's not, it's just going to leave it as the grayed background. So let's test it out. Close that, run it. So whenever this volts tag is greater than 5, which it is right now, that animation changes to blue in color. Okay, so that's a color animation for a graphic. So let's just review the 8 steps that we did. We made this button visible or invisible by using, what did we use? The maintain push button. And then we had 2 shapes on top of it. One a pushed in button, one a released button, and it was based on the HMI bit tag. Secondly, we had a numeric display so we could see the state of that bit tag. Then we had a rounded animation. We changed the color from gray to green when it was false or true. Numeric display for the voltage. Horizontal slider. Remember, the horizontal slider was made up of 3 parts. The horizontal scale, the rectangular button that we got from up here, and then a box that we put around it to kind of contain that slider. The bar graph, pretty simple, but we just tied it to the volts variable. The animated fill, we would have got the object from the factory symbols and then changed its color. Okay, or sorry, we were changing the fill. And then lastly, we got another animated graphic, and we used an expression in there to say if the voltage was greater than 5, then we'd turn that graphic on. I hope you can try these out in the lab. If you have any questions or problems, make sure you come and see me during the lab time. Thanks for viewing the display. Hope it helps.